Well, good morning, everybody. I am Reverend Jessica, the minister at KUUF Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Welcome to our online service in Zoom webinar. I invite you all to follow along in the order of service. I'll put that in the chat. If you're phoning in today, welcome. We have a Zoom coffee hour after the service, and the number to call in is the same number that you used to access this webinar. But the meeting ID is 438-451-134, and the password is JOY, capital J-O-Y. And I will put that in the chat as well. I think it was put in the chat earlier too. So there you go. Oh, and thank you, Beth. So our coffee hour today will include a receiving line for Margo Rinehart, because today is a special day. Today is Margo Rinehart's ordination, and we will ordain Margo as part of our service today. But I also want to name the grief that many of us are holding today. This has been a week of outrage and lamentation at the brutal killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis and the continued violence against Black lives, particularly state-sanctioned violence. In response to this violence, we've seen an uprising, a coming together of people all across the world. Many of us have spent the week protesting, attending vigils, and making phone calls, providing financial support, taking actions that show what we believe and what our congregation has affirmed, which is that Black lives matter. And we refuse to inherit and perpetuate a legacy of white supremacy, a legacy of genocide against Black people, people of color, and Indigenous people. And as we affirm this together again and commit to showing up with more courage and more risk in the weeks and months ahead, let us take some measure of hope from the uprising we have seen this week. Let us take some hope from the youth leadership in Kitsap County, whose voices have led us in our protest. And in our celebration today of Margo's ordination, let us rejoice that one of us has been called to lead and has accepted that call. And with Margo's example, may we be inspired to make of our grief and anger meaningful use to continue to fight for change. And I would like to start today, as we do, by acknowledging that the land on which we all live is the Aboriginal territory of the Suquamish, the S'Klallam, and the Skokomish people. They have lived in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's central Salish Sea for thousands of years. These tribes still live here and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. Now please join me in our call to worship gathered here, and I invite you to sing along.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, spirits draw near.
Good morning. Welcome to the Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Whoever you are and wherever you have come from, or whatever your comfort with modern technology, for this hour, we here are one gathered congregation and all are welcome. My name is Rosemary Dougal, and I serve on the worship committee as well as the welcoming and membership committee. I'd like to welcome any visitors. Please introduce yourself in our chat section. We welcome more interaction with all during our after-service coffee hour. The link to the Zoom coffee hour is in the chat box. You will also need the password JOY to get into the coffee hour. There will be a receiving line in the coffee hour so we can all congratulate the new Reverend Margo Rinehart. The announcements are on our webpage, www.kuuf.org, or in our weekly newsletter, The Candle. This service is a special shared ministry in the ordination of Margo Rinehart. Participants are our minister, Reverend Jessica Starr Rockers, our former minister, Reverend Dr. Elizabeth Stevens, who now serves the UU Church of the Palouse in Moscow, Idaho, KUUF co-presidents, Lisa Johnson and Terry Mallory, and Karen Leader Scott from our congregation. And now I'd like to invite Benjamin Reinhardt, Margo's son, to read the chalice lighting words. You are invited to light a personal chalice or candle in your home.
Good morning, everyone. We have faith that each flame lights another. We have faith that each person uplifts another. We have faith that a leader guides a community, and we have faith that a minister ignites the souls of all.
Please join in singing our opening hymn, number 126, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing.
Come thou fount of every blessing, tune our hearts to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. While the hope of life's perfection fills our hearts with joy and love, teach us ever to be faithful. May we still thy goodness prove. Come thou fount of every vision, lift our eyes to what may come. See the lion and the young lamb dwell together in thy home. Hear the cries of war fall silent, feel our love glow like the sun. When we all serve one another, then our
We gather as a caring community, seeking life's deeper meanings. We value diversity and affirm the worth of all living things. We strive to speak truth in love, to act for justice, to grow in spirit, and to care for the earth. We celebrate with open hearts and minds the creative power that sustains and transforms us. And now it is time for our morning offering. Today's offering will go to Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism. Blue provides ministry for and by Black UUs, while working to expand the role of Black UUs within our faith. It is customary for newly ordained ministers to choose a recipient that is especially meaningful to them, and Margo chose Blue in support of Black lives in this time of national uprising. To make an online contribution, please click on the PayPal link in the chat box. You may also send a check to the church's P.O. box address on your screen. Please write BLUU in the memo section of your check. If this is your first time with KUUF, there's no need to contribute, as you are our guest. Let there be an offering to strengthen and sustain our wider Unitarian Universalist community, which is sacred to so many of us.
Well, now I would like the children who are watching, the young and young at heart, I want to invite you to maybe sit a little bit closer to the screen. And I don't know if you remember this, but last year in April, the sign that we had at the front of our fellowship that says Black Lives Matter, well, that sign was vandalized, which means that someone came who didn't agree with it and they damaged it. And so we put up a new sign, and we actually at the time bought 3 banners. And I asked all the kids in the fellowship that day to bless our Black Lives Matter banners. And you all gathered around and blessed them. And after the service, we went up to the roadside and put up one of the banners on our KUUF sign, and that banner still is there. And I have heard from folks all over this county who have driven by and seen that sign and how much it has meant to them and how important it is for us, our community, to say Black Lives Matter. Well, this week you may have heard that there were a bunch of protests going on all over the country and all over the world because a Black man named George Floyd was killed last week in Minneapolis, Minnesota by police. And everyone has been outraged and saying enough is enough. I think in Kitsap County where we live, there was a protest every single day this week, and some of those protests were organized by young people just like you. And at almost every one of these protests, members of our congregation, KUUF, were there with one of our banners, the banners that you got to bless last year. And so those blessed banners have been all around the county, from Bremerton and Silverdale to Poulsbo and Bainbridge, saying what we believe, that Black Lives Matter. And maybe some of you have been to one of those protests, and maybe you have led your own protests this week and been putting up signs at your house or in your neighborhood or talking about Black Lives Matter. And you should know that your blessing has gone out all around this county at a time when we really need it. Black people are still being killed for no reason, and they are still being treated as if they don't matter. And we are saying Black lives do matter. Black people matter. Black voices matter. Black dreams matter. And the song that we sing every week, This Little Light of Mine, was actually a gospel song that was turned into a protest song by a woman named Zilphia Horton during the Civil Rights Movement. And she said that protest songs are nonviolent weapons. And it says to the people who are trying to stop us or hurt us that we are not giving up. And some people say that songs like This Little Light of Mine are blessed by all the people who have sung them through all the marches for justice, and that when we sing it, we are with them, fighting with them for justice, and this week especially saying Black Lives Matter, and that we have hope, and we believe in ourselves, and we aren't giving up until everyone is free. So I'm going to invite you to sing that song with me again, as we do every week. And I have my guitar and my singers who are going to sing with me. Liam, you can sit down right here if you want. Okay, so we're going to start with This Little Light of Mine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. All around the world, all around the world, I'm gonna let it shine. All around the world, I'm gonna shine. This little light of mine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. 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 Thank you for singing with me. Thank you for singing with us. And this week, if you were out at a protest and somebody didn't agree with you, I just want to remind you to keep letting your light shine and don't be afraid. We're with you. Oh, I can feel you all singing along, even though I can't hear you. So now is the time in our service for our joys and sorrows. Though we are physically distant from one another, our hearts and our spirits remain connected. When shared together, our joys are amplified and our sorrows lessened. And I would like to take a moment today to offer a prayer, if you would join with me. For those Black lives who have been lost to white violence, for their families, their parents and children, their partners and loved ones, their friends and their communities who are grieving and mourning, for all those who fear police violence, for all those who worry for their Black sons and daughters, for all those who can't breathe, for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Manuel Ellis, for Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown and Sandra Bland, for Eric Garner, Ahmaud Arbery, and Tamir Rice, for Stonechild Chief Stick. And I invite you to put any other names in the chat of Black people who have been killed by white violence, any names that I have not said. And for all those names that we will never know, whose deaths were not caught on video, whose stories barely made it into the paper, let us hold them in our hearts today and in the days ahead as we commit to fighting for justice and love in their honor. And if you have a personal joy or sorrow to share, I invite you to put that in the chat this morning as well. Ellen Newberg is sending love and support for Eloise, who is having a medical procedure this week. We have a sorrow from Lenny Barone for a recent death in the family. It's been a rough week. We're with you, Lenny, holding you in our hearts. I invite us all to take a breath together too. Maria, this is from Chris. Maria is sad because she has to say goodbye to this home. Holding you, Maria and Chris. Bonner says, this joy is tempered with our collective sorrows surrounding the national discourse, but am so joyful to have Reverend Dr. Liz back in our pulpit today, honoring the soon-to-be Reverend Marco. We're holding all of that in our hearts with you, Bonner. Joe says, joy that Eleni will be home in a week to visit for 2 months and to help out. What a joy. We're so glad. Dakota, I've been volunteering in a youth group for 8 years. This week was my hardest ever. 2 of my students were Black. A third's father is a police officer, and his older brother disowned them for that reason. Dakota, we're sharing that with you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. May you who shared this morning feel the love of this community surrounding you and holding you close. Mac and Lisa feel sorrow and love for our old friends, Ian and Bonnie. Ian has a brain tumor and has been reaching out to his friends. We're with you, Mac and Lisa, sending our prayers to Ian and Bonnie. For all those whose joy or sorrow is too tender to share this morning, our hearts are with you. May the spirit of life and love bring peace to us all. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.
Prayer for Ordination by Thomas Mickelson. Spirit of ministry, once again you have spoken, and your beckoning into service has fallen on a fertile soul. Not only did she listen, she responded. It changed her life. We have gathered round her in this ceremony to bless her and send her on her way, to let her know how much she has our respect and goodwill. We hold her fondly in our thoughts and prayers, and as we envision her ministry in the years to come, we renew our commitment as well to her and her ministry. We want her to know, as we set her aside through the sacred act of ordination, that we affirm our role in her ministry. She is one of ours, and we are her people. We are pleased to place our authority in her keeping, with confidence that her ministry will bring blessing wherever she goes. Remind us that ministers spring forth out of communities like this one, where the heartbeat of faith is strong and steady, where the life of spirit runs deep and wide, where people listen for the still small voice with conviction that nothing in this world, in this life, is more real. Be present here. Bless this ordination and the one who is ordained, that her ministry may bring healing and light wherever she goes. Amen. Let it be.
Oh, wow. It is such an honor and a privilege to be here with you all today. With Margo, of course, my former congregant, fellow Emerald Heights mom and tri-babe, my friend, my beloved colleague, but also with all of you, those of you whom I knew and loved in the years I served KUUF. I miss you all a lot still. And those of you who've joined this beautiful community in the years since. I have to admit, I'm a little disappointed that this reunion is only virtual. I have a whole bunch of hugs and handshakes stored up over all these years. I guess I'll have to hang on to them for a little while longer. I'm also personally just so profoundly grateful for this opportunity. In just a couple of days, it will be the 20th anniversary of my own ordination into the Unitarian Universalist ministry. To be invited to reflect on the nature of this calling and to worship with the congregation that taught me so much about what it means to be a minister. Well, I just don't have words. Just a full heart and tears and goosebumps. Then there is the larger historical context. Here we are in this moment of profound change. We're at an inflection point. There's a shift in the willingness of our faith and of our nation to face and address the legacy of systemic white supremacy. Never has there been a greater opportunity for ministers with spiritual depth and prophetic courage to shift the world toward collective liberation. And it's not just ministers either. This is a moment when we all need to sink our roots deep into our shared values. We all need to embrace the strength and resilience that comes from knowing that we are people of faith who have sided with love over and over again throughout the ages, even at great personal cost. This is a moment when we all need to strengthen our wings and gather our courage. We need to get ready to launch ourselves into the unknown, get ready to embrace transformation and change at the personal level, in our faith communities, and in the world. I'm going to bookend my remarks this morning with two readings. The first comes from minister and theologian Howard Thurman. The seed of the jack pine will not be given up by the cone unless the cone itself is subjected to sustained and concentrated heat. The forest fire sweeps all before it, and there remain but the charred reminders of a former growth and a former beauty. It is then, in the midst of the ashes, that the secret of the cone is exposed. The tender seed finds the stirring of life deep within itself, and what is deepest in the seed reaches out to what is deepest in life. The result? A tender shoot, gentle roots, until at last there stands straight against the sky the majestic glory of the jack pine. It is not too far afield to suggest that there are things deep within the human spirit that are firmly embedded, dormant, latent, and inactive. These things are always positive, even though they may be destructive rather than creative. But there they remain until our lives are swept by the forest fire. It may be some mindless tragedy, some violent disclosure of human depravity, or some moment of agony in which the whole country or nation may be involved. The experience releases something that has been locked up within all through the years. If it be something that calls to the deepest things in life, we may, like the jack pine, grow tall and straight against the sky. Thurman published these words in his book, Meditations of the Heart, way back in 1953. It's enough to make a person believe in precognition, or perhaps we simply need to acknowledge that there have been many moments when mindless tragedy and the violent disclosure of human depravity have captured the fickle attention of the American public, just as the video of George Floyd's murder at the hands of Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin has captured our attention in these volatile days. As a white person, I can only imagine the sheer exhaustion our Black siblings must be feeling after hundreds of years of objectification, exploitation, discrimination, persecution, and senseless violence. As a human being, though, I do have empathy, and every cell in my body is crying out that it is time, and it is past time, for serious systemic change. It is time, and it is past time for justice to roll down like water, because only justice will put out this particular forest fire. I need to acknowledge, though, that for all that conviction and certainty that now is the moment, those same cells in my body hold confusion and anxiety. What am I called to do? Who am I called to be? Thurman makes it clear, what is deepest in me needs to reach out to what is deepest in life. I need to ground myself spiritually and nurture the connection to my sense of call. In times of heightened intensity, it can feel almost self-indulgent to focus on the practices that sustain and nourish our souls. Yet these are the times when it is most important. There's an old Zen saying, you should sit in meditation for 20 minutes a day unless you're too busy, and then you should sit for an hour. But spiritual practice isn't the only thing that helps keep us rooted. Plants actually have one of two types of root systems. Either they grow tap roots, single roots that reach down, from which branches and tendrils extend, or they have fibrous roots with matted structures that create underground root networks. Now, I'm imagining that most of you have at some point pulled dandelions out of your lawn or garden, and dandelions are a good example of a taproot style plant. You have to get the whole root, but if you do, that particular plant is completely gone, and any additional dandelions are going to have to grow independently from new seeds. Compare that to pulling up grass. It's a very different experience. If you get under that fibrous matted root system, you can pull up big clumps, but it's almost impossible to get rid of it completely because the adjacent patches just send out new shoots. Now, in my garden, I much prefer taproot style weeds. Grass is my least favorite weed. It's satisfying pulling up a dandelion and getting that whole taproot. Meanwhile, the grass just drives me nuts. I keep going and going and I can never get it all. But metaphorically, the difference between those two weeds reinforced for me the importance of connections. The more we're in relationship, the more our lives tangle and touch. And the more we do that, the more persistent and resilient we will be. Individual spiritual practice is all well and good, but if we do our rooting in isolation, we risk sending our taproot down a rabbit hole. We make ourselves vulnerable to uprooting. And when we lose that sense of rootedness, when we lose our grounding, we're no longer any good to anyone. This is why we need religious community now more than ever. Remember that the origins of the word religion come from the Latin ligare, which means to bind. The work of our churches, communities, and fellowships, the work of our faith is to bind us together, to one another, to the transcendent, and to all people everywhere. This is how our religious communities participate in creating the beloved community, capital T, capital B, capital C. The aim of our faith, our Unitarian Universalist faith, is collective liberation. We start from a place of naming and affirming that our lives are bound up with those who are oppressed and persecuted. We are people who know that we cannot be free until all are free. Which brings me to the second reading I want to share, Caged Bird by Maya Angelou. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped, and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. When it comes to birds, the bigger the wingspan, the less a bird needs to flap. It gets further, faster, because it's able to soar. And so it is with privilege. We who are white need to acknowledge that we are where we are because we started with an advantage. We need to be ready to sacrifice our comfort and use that added mass that we have simply by virtue of being born in the particular bodies we are born in to move the conversation forward. I like to remember, though, that birds aren't the only thing that flies. Bees fly, and bees are actually aerodynamically ridiculous. It turns out that their wings are too small and their bodies are too big. And it turns out that the reason they're able to stay aloft, even when they're carrying heavy loads, is that their wing attachments are loose enough that they don't just flap, they twist and rotate. This makes me wonder about ways I can better release attachments that get in the way of transformation. Then there are butterflies. Butterflies, it turns out, have fixed wings, and they fly by contracting and releasing their abdomen. They literally bend themselves in half, and that moves their wings in a figure 8 pattern. It reminds me of one of my favorite mantras, one I use when I'm heading into a situation I'm unsure of: strong core, soft knees. I stumbled on this mantra while I was cross-country skiing, actually. Strong core helps with balance. Soft knees help the body respond to the lumps and the bumps as they come. I have this vision of all of the creatures of the air descending en masse to stand guard while those freedom-singing birds escape from the cages in which they have been languishing for all these years. They have been singing for a long time. They've been trying to get out. This moment is so exciting because more people are listening than ever before. More people are ready to take flight and do what we can to keep the forces of white supremacy from keeping those cage doors locked. This is a moment that demands deep faith and profound courage from each and every one of us. Margo, you are accepting a call, a sacred call to help people connect with their faith and find their courage by supporting them in religious community. Any minister worth their salt, anyone with integrity, will not ask her folks to do anything she's not willing to do herself. So with your call to ministry comes a call to do the work it takes to become ever more rooted in the values we hold dear. A call to courageously allow yourself to be transformed over and over again by spirit, by the relationships you'll be lucky enough to have with the people you serve, by the relationships you'll cultivate with those who are crying out to be free. It's not easy, this call. It will ask everything of you over and over again. It will ask more than you think you have in you to give. And in those moments, reach down toward what is deepest in life and connect and gather the strength you need. And then breathe deep and rise to the occasion and emerge transformed. Will you all please join me in prayer? Spirit of life, Spirit of love, known by many names throughout the ages, be with us in these times of uncertainty, in these times of isolation, in these times of unrest, in these times of change. Help us all to know ourselves to be active participants, strong and resilient, able not just to weather, but to affect change. Help us sink our roots deep. Help us rise to the occasion. Help us learn and grow and stretch. And help us remember in the midst of all this to rest and take exquisite care of our precious selves. In this complex and complicated world, always shifting, always transforming, may we welcome new realities, new ideas, new ways of being, new visions of what a just and kind society might look like. May we be brave and fierce as we work for justice. May we never forget that all we do and all that we are, all our striving and struggling is for love's sake and love's sake alone. Amen. So be it, and so may it be.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Reverend Liz. And Now it's time for the Act of Ordination. I'm Lisa Johnson, here with fellow co-president Terry Mallory, and what an honor it is, Margo, to be here. We'll both do our best to keep our tears under control. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the authority to ordain ministers rests fully with individual congregations. We confer a sacred change upon our ministers, entrusting them with a lifelong task of ministering to this world and its people, both within and beyond our congregations. Today, we have the honor of adding another minister to the lineage of clergy that reaches far back in time and far forward into the future. The Act of Ordination bestows the authority of religious leadership, the title of Reverend, and the privilege to wear a stole. Today, the members of the Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship gather to ordain Margo Rinehart to the Unitarian Universalist ministry. Margo, having seen you freely share your gifts here as lay leader, as choir member, and board member to this congregation for over 20 years, recognizing your call to serve through faith and relationship, and having received the recommendation of the Ministerial Fellowship Committee of the Unitarian Universalist Association, by the authority of this congregation, we wish to offer you ordination. Are you prepared to accept the mantle of ministry?
I am.
Will the members of the Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship please pause to hear these words? By the authority granted in our living tradition, we, the members of the Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, joyfully ordain you, Margo Rinehart, into the Unitarian Universalist ministry. We charge you to bring your whole self to your ministry, heart, body, mind, and spirit, to speak the truth with humility and courage, to be fully present to joys and sorrows, to live with integrity, and to work to build justice and beloved community. We pledge to support you in the ways that we can throughout your ministry. May you continue to learn, grow, change, and live into this call for the rest of your days.
With deep joy and gratitude, I humbly accept the ministry to which you ordain me, trusting the spirit and mystery that moves within, between, and beyond us all, and mindful of the immense privileges and responsibilities of ordination. I pledge to minister to this beautiful and hurting world, inviting awe, curiosity, and love into our interactions. I dedicate myself to this work and know I cannot do it alone. I ask for your love and support as I take up this ministry.
Will all those assembled here join in these words? Margo,
with glad hearts, we celebrate you and affirm your ordination. We will continue to be sources of love and support to you, and we offer our blessings upon your path. May your ministry nourish you, and may it inspire love, justice, and healing for you and the world.
Now it is our honor to introduce the Reverend Margo Rinehart.
And my son, Ben Reinhardt.
So one of the lovely members of our congregation, I believe it was Ginger Uni, made this absolutely gorgeous stole with ornate detailings of all of the various biomes of the Pacific Northwest. Everything from silty and loamy soil, to wetlands, to dense ferns, to fruitful trees. Truly, all of the beautiful things that our part of the world has to offer. And of course, in true faith fashion, both a North Star and a chalice, to signify a leader of the UU faith who will guide us and lead us.
I want to also add that there is a small portion at the back of the stole that Ginger was unable to finish because she fell and she shattered her elbow. And as she was giving me the stole, she was explaining this, and I looked at the back of the stole and I said, how lovely. It's like the matin chalice. There is a piece that is unfinished. And as there is always a piece unfinished in us that calls us to do more, the stole is the perfect representation of the charge that is before me. Thank you to the congregation, as you are the ones that commissioned the stole, and to Ginger for her love and care.
Well, now, Margo, let me introduce the next piece of our ordination. In our Unitarian Universalist tradition, when one of our own is ordained and has made a vow to undertake a new way of being in the service of ministry, we invite all those present to participate in a laying on of hands. Well, we can't physically touch one another right now, unfortunately. So in this digital environment, we will be doing for Margo a laying on of blessings. This sacred act honors the communal nature of ministry. It is a reminder to us that the work of ministry is always shared, that the authority to minister in our tradition is conferred by congregations, and that the ministers are meant to serve human lives here and now. This is our moment to confer on Margo our blessings, but it is also our chance to acknowledge the ways that Margo has blessed us, the ways she has blessed this fellowship with her care and service, with her love and her joy. She has shared her gifts with this community, and KUUF has been well blessed by her presence. And these blessings that we have shared and the blessing we give to Margo today, these will go out and spread, and other communities and other families and other people will be blessed by the love that we all share. And so let us begin. And I'm going to spotlight Margo and turn off my video. And I would like to invite Margo's family to surround her right now, if they are present and available. And you can place your hands of blessing on her. These are the people with whom Margo shares her life. These are the ones who will uphold her and be beside her, who have supported her throughout her journey in ministry. And their blessing is the blessing of all the generations of Margo's family, all those who can't be with us today, but whose spirit is present with Margo, and all the generations yet to come, the future that Margo is pledging to serve, a world of love and justice that she is committing to work to create. And for those of you who are attending today, all those from our KUUF community and all those in the gathered congregation, I invite you to join in this blessing by raising your hands to your screen. And close your eyes if you feel comfortable. And let us take a moment to bless Margo and to feel the love that is present here today among us. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love. In a time of great uncertainty, in a time of revolution and uprising, when we are all being called to be brave, to be courageous, to take risks, Margo is answering the call of love. She is not turning away, she is moving toward, leaning into the heart of the fire of commitment, into the transformative fire of love and justice. And the world needs you, Margo. The world needs your love, your compassion, your care. There is a love holding you. There is a love holding all that you love. There is a love holding all. You rest in this love. When things get tough, as they will, and you doubt yourself, when you feel alone and afraid, remember this love. The love of this community where you first felt the stirrings of your call. The love of this community that held you and prayed for you and supported you as you pursued your dream. And the love of this community that has ordained you into ministry. This love is blessing you and holding you. The roots of this love are fibrous, and they will support you just as they support this community, deep and resilient. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love. May you be blessed, Margo, and may you be a blessing. And may you know that no matter where you go, we are with you in the very roots of you and your ministry. May the strength of this love hold you always. Amen, and blessed be. And now let us sing together our closing hymn, The Fire of Commitment.
Good community who have entrusted your faith in me and assigned a vision for me. Go into the world knowing the flame inside you can illuminate a path toward justice. Go into the world knowing that the spark inside of you will light another, and you are not alone. Go into the world knowing that while a minister may lead in igniting courage and action, it is the community that tends those fires. Go into the world knowing down in your bones that you not only uplift my ministry, but that you are exemplars in the fight for what is righteous, true, and just. We share a ministry. We all leave today in the common cause of bringing about a better world and calling out what is unjust and unfair and oppressive in our world. Amen. I should have made you my video